Hi there. I'm going to go on. I'm going to pause in the telling of the Pergola Pump because I think it's time for a gloss. Now, I'll remind you that a gloss, that's another word for a commentary. I think it might be actually needed at this point, not just for anybody, even for just someone listening to telling. What I want to do is go through what might be called a Dramatis Personae, the characters. Who are the characters in this story? Dramatis Personae usually goes with a play. Uh, I'm going to name pretty much all of them. So let me go down through them more or less in the order that they appear. There's Lance. Later we find out his name is Dulac, and he's just called the bicyclist at the beginning, and a hard word for me to pronounce. I kept having trouble with that. There's him. Then we run into Violet. Violet Elanter Wessex is her whole name. Elanter was her maiden name. Wessex, her married name. She's been divorced twice. That you've learned already if you've been able to follow it. She goes by Violet, but Vi by her friends, and her granddaughter calls her Gmaul. Well, then there is her granddaughter. Her name is Elaine Wessex. Granddaughter. See, Violet's son was a Wessex, and so this is Elaine. Her middle name, though, I don't know if you know that yet, is Mandili. Mandili, Elaine Mandili Wessex. She goes by Mandy because of that middle name. Then there is Essex, or Tatus. Essex Tatus Crow is his whole name. And there is lots to be said about him. So far, the only thing of really important, he's the neighbor, kind of a nosy, grouchy neighbor. And he was married once. We recently found that out in the last video to a woman named Marianne. You know nothing about her yet. There's Dr. Matthew Dulac. That's Lance's father. Lance also has a younger brother named Matt or Matthew Dulac. He's about the only character that I've created so far that would not necessarily have to be there. Which reminds me, there was that girl with the mocha-colored skin, about 13, 14 years old. You've probably forgotten all about her, but she was the only one really that took notice of Lance as he was struggling to make it to Violet's house. So she's of some importance. Wedge is mentioned. Let me see, what do you know about Wedge? Well, he was an old friend of Violet's. He lives he's also a friend of Lance. And and Dr. What's his first name? Dr. Matthew Dulac. His wife is named Dina. Maybe not. She maybe wouldn't have to be there, but I wanted to say about her. I'll tell you maybe a little bit more about Wedge in a bit. We've learned that there's a girl named Morgan. Morgan is Lance's girlfriend back in Dutch Corner. Let's see. We've learned about Sage and Rosemary. Those are Violet's sisters. Violet's the youngest. And we learned about them because when Elaine was having such a hard time living in Manhattan, after her mother was killed by that bus, they thought about having her leave Manhattan and go live with Sage or Rosemary, who lived in Maine. Rosemary also owns land in New Hampshire. I'm seeing. Other people. Elaine's mother, I remembered her name. Her last name is Mandili, or maiden name. and Mary was her first name. And her father, I said already, is David Wessex. That's the son of Violet, named after Violet's father, who was David A. Lantier. Unimportant character, really, but there's Madame Fifette. We just learned about her. She was the French teacher when Tatus was in high school. She replaced a guy that the kids all called Fifi. I wouldn't have had to name her really, but sometimes it's just easier to tell the story if they have names. All right, some places. You learned about or that there is a church called the Good Samaritan Independent Bible Church. I'm not positive whether that's going to be an important character, if you will, or not. But anyway, it was there. And places now. This all takes place in Richland, North Virginia. Monmouth Avenue, that was named. Astelot Street is where Violet actually lives. And Avalon Avenue was mentioned, but it hasn't become important at all yet. What else? Tbilisi, Georgia. Georgia, the country now, not the U.S. state, but the country. And that was mentioned because that was where David Wessex first saw the woman he married, Mary Mandili. And let's see, Manhattan was mentioned because that's where David works and the place where Elaine was so unhappy. Dutch Corner, that's where Wedge lives. That's where Lance is from. It's near a town called Overtree, and this is in Pennsylvania. And then Brazil was mentioned several times, really, I think, and Peace Corps, because that's where Violet, when she was a young woman, she had served there. Now that's a quick rundown. I've got to go back to deal with the character of Tatus. There's a kind of a problem with that character, which I'll explain in a separate video. I've begun to call these chapters. This would be the fourth chapter of the gloss for Lance. And I've got a few other things to mention too. So I may stick with the gloss for a couple of days before I resume the actual telling of the Pergola Pump. Bye for now.